So today is August 20th, 2020. It's the summer of 2020. It's a very hot summer, not only when it comes to weather, but also when it comes to political situation across the globe. And today is very special meeting because we're gonna talk on issue that is very, very important, and it can be a game changer in Europe, maybe even beyond Europe. We're gonna talk today about Belarus, and we have a great guest. Give me 1 minute and we're gonna start officially. I see my guest is already there. I see also some participants of today's meeting, some familiar names. Some names are more familiar, some less, but that's great. The more the merrier, as they say in English-speaking countries. Perfect. I think we can start. Good evening, everyone who watches us in Europe. Good afternoon to anyone who watches us in Americas, and perhaps good morning to other part of the world. My name is Jacek Spendel. I am president of Liberty International, and I welcome you today, August 20th, 2020, at another, I think it's the fifth one, Liberty International Zoom conversation, Zoom public conversation. Today, we're gonna talk on Belarus, what's happening in Belarus. The topic is the cost of freedom. And our guest is with us here. Her name is Maria Skorokhod. And Maria comes from Minsk, the capital of Belarus. She is a true freedom fighter. Freedom fighter that actually needs to fight very, very hard these days. We're gonna talk about it. I'm happy to know Maria for a long time. This is 7 years now. We met back in 2013 in Ukraine at Liberty English Camp. Liberty Camp, that's another project under auspices of Liberty International, a project that Language of Liberty Institute in particular is active, our sister organization. Back then in 2013, our partner from Belarus, Yaroslav Romanchuk, he brought number of Belarusian students, and I learned that we should say Belarusian, not Belarusian. This was my early mistake, and I was corrected actually by Maria. Number of Belarusian students, activists, freedom fighters, freedom lovers, and this is how I met Maria. She was from the beginning outstanding, not only with her perfect English, but also with her attitude. She's very talkative. She's hungry for knowledge, meeting new people, learning about ideas, and very idealistic in a very positive sense of that word. She was only around maybe 19, maybe 20 years old back then. Maria, what was your age when we met?
Well, I'm 24 now, so this has been 7 years ago, around 16 or something.
Oh my God, I didn't know. But so you were already very grown intellectually. She's a former president of European Youth Parliament in Belarus. She's a former student activist and currently just freedom activist, young freedom activist. And what is quite important and impressive, she's only 24 as you know, but she is a founder of a private English school in Minsk. So she's very entrepreneurial. She has entrepreneurial experience, and she described herself as a libertarian. She loves freedom. She wants Belarus to be a free country. And we are talking today about the situation in her own country, the country she loves, the country she wants to be free. because Belarus has serious problems, and these are not new problems. Since 1994, the country is ruled by a cruel, I would say, dictator, officially president, but you know, de jure president, de facto dictator. His name is Alexander Lukashenko. He is socialist. I would say he's a communist. He always praised the Soviet Union, the country he was raised in, the country where he was a head of Gulag. He was head of some compulsory farming socialist place, and now he is president of Belarus for 26 years. He calls even Belarus a big Gulag, that he used to be head of small Gulag, now he's a head of big Gulag. That's not good. His approach means that people's freedoms are really limited in this country. And this is not just economic freedoms. Belarus has majority of economy in the public hands. Public sector definitely dominates. It's not 100%. Otherwise, Maria would not be able to start her private English school. But it's still... Hi, Ken. Great to see you. It's still definitely majority of economy. I think around 70 or 80%.
Around 70%. Yeah, it's around 70 at the moment.
Of the economy is in the head of the state, in the hands of the state. That is also important to our discussion today. And also other freedoms, like freedom of speech is suppressed, freedom of gatherings is suppressed. It's definitely not easy situation. And what happened only less than 2 weeks ago, there was a presidential elections that had a opposition contestants. There were people from the opposition who did run in these elections, with Svetlana Tikhanovska being the major candidate from the opposition. And what is interesting, she didn't plan to run. She's a wife, she's a young lady, she's a wife and mother, but not necessarily a political fighter. Her husband, a blogger, an active freedom fighter and a YouTuber, he planned to run, but he was arrested early on, and his bid for presidency was abolished. He couldn't make it. Long story short, the election was frauded. Official institution that runs elections in Belarus declared Alexander Lukashenko received 80% of votes, and people just couldn't believe this. And this time is not only Minsk, this time is entire country that protests this, that says, stop lying, stop frauding elections, stop telling us lies in front of us. Lukashenko is not a president anymore. Enough is enough. Not the first time people protest, but first time protest so eagerly. So let me start with this little conversation. Before I start, I just want to say, at Liberty International, we do these conversations this way, that first around 20 minutes, it's me and my guest and me, to be honest, because the guest matters most. I will really limit my talk soon. And then second half, we encourage you to ask questions, and you can ask them on the chat here on Zoom. You can ask them on Facebook, and I want to welcome all the people who watch us on Facebook. Great to have you. And you can also send me email. My email address is spendel, S-P-E-N-D-E-L, at liberty-intl.org. Spendel at liberty-intl.org. So 3 ways, either here on Zoom or Facebook or my email. So let's start. I have a first question to you, Maria. Tell us your story briefly. How did you end up being part of this massive opposition, when it started, and what has changed in your activism over the years? I remember when you were just a teenager, we talked 10 years ago, and you were already, we can say, part of the opposition. But now it's 2020, situation is different. How did it fluctuate? How did it all go?
I think if we go to the very start, it all started quite early as I was doing my high school years. A few years before the university, where I got to meet the people who were pretty active in the field and who were fighting for basic freedoms, who were the human rights defenders. And mainly how you get into this in Belarus in such an early age is you join a few educational schools and courses, usually abroad, where you get to talk to opinion leaders, listen to different opinions, and you kind of get this different perspective to what is happening in your country. Because I feel like the reason a lot of people are not normally very engaged in politics in Belarus is partially because there is not too much chance for this, because it's not like you can, go and register a political party. It's been pretty impossible for the last 15 years or so. But also because you just never get to really experience how problematic it is. So for many people, it's just, sitting at home, working, going to supermarkets. Many have never really started their own business in the country. So I feel like for a lot of people living here, they have just not experienced, the situations they haven't been through, what motivates you to be engaged politically. So I started with just getting the knowledge about how not perfect, the entire situation is in here. And then I started getting into student activism, because we did believe the civil society starts from studentship. And, these are the youth, the people who are active, who are, energetic, motivated, or at least we thought they were. So we started promoting student rights, different grassroots initiatives. We started doing some advocative campaigns in Minsk and in Belarus. Those were, in a way, I wouldn't say very successful, but quite big for their time, because there has not really been anything like this for, 5 or 10 years before we did that. So we tried to engage as many students as possible, which turned out to be quite challenging. And yeah, then I continued with setting up my own business and trying to stay active, working, doing some educational, discussions and activities for the youth in Belarus. I think I've mainly always worked with the young people here. And then speaking of what has changed now, if we go to the very recent times, which is the last months or a few weeks, I think it feels like we've always been promoting some ideas, but it has never been until very recently, like literally a few weeks ago, that we started feeling the support of the entire country. And it's not now like a bunch of people in opposition saying like, hey, this is unfair, this is what we should change. But you now feel this unity in the country, because this is the time when I personally, and I feel like a lot of people looking at what experts say and what has been discussed in the community, for the first time in the long run, if not ever, feel that the country has united in this wish for the change and in this wish for freedom as well. That this has never been the case, and this is something that has changed significantly very recently, and I would say very positively.
I'm sorry, I'm back. I unmuted. This is really impressive. And Maria, what do you think? What has changed? What made people to leave their comfort zone? I remember we talked many times about Belarus, comparing people attitude there to the attitude of the people in Ukraine, for instance. And one notion that we always observed was that people in Belarus were a bit more passive than Ukrainians, maybe than Poles even. maybe they didn't like the system they live in, but to find this extra courage and extra power, extra time to go out and risk their lives for something that is uncertain, that was a perspective that was not so easy for them to grasp. What changed this time that they said, okay, enough is enough, and let's change the country?
I think there are various opinions on this, but if I were to answer what I think there are three main reasons why so many people are now so united and so willing to change something. First off, for a very long time, people have been criticizing the opposition in the country. And by saying opposition, I mainly mean some political leaders who have been trying to run for elections, to share their political campaigns, to like unite people and to actually make the change in the country. And for a very long time, people did not really believe them. And every time a new political leader was born or, like appeared on the political stage, people were very reluctant to support them, either because they disagreed with some of the aspects of their political program, or because they were like, hey, we don't really have elections in the country, so what kind of politician are you even? And people were very unwilling to engage in politics because they always associated politics with opposition, and they felt like this is, none of their business. And this election could have been no exception, but what actually happened this time is we had a whole bunch of independent candidates who have never been active in Belarusian politics. So we got the former head of the high technology park in Belarus, who is also a former civil servant to run for presidency. And he got the support from the IT field because the people knew him and they knew the decisions he made before. And then we also got the head of one of the big banks in Belarus running for presidency. And he's also been actively investing in different cultural programs and projects in Belarus. And he was quite a well-known person for a lot of Belarusians, who follow opinion leaders. And he's also been given interviews recently, so people did know who he was and they did trust him. And then we also get Sergei Tikhanovsky, who's like basically a self-made blogger who started just driving around the country and talking to people and asking them what their problems were, and then sharing these problems with the public. So he got the support of the electorate that basically used to be Lukashenko's electorate. So, not the elites, the people from business, but rather, the average Belarusians. So we got a lot of very interesting candidates who have never really been engaged in politics before, which may not be a very obvious advantage if you look at it from the Western perspective. But I feel like here in Belarus, it gave them this advantage of people not being afraid to support them and feeling they can relate to them more. So this was the first thing. The second thing, it's been the first time that the main candidates kind of started from scratch. So instead of running your campaign and saying, hey, we don't have elections and the elections will be falsified, so, let's play with this. What they did was saying, okay, let's pretend everything is fair. So let's try and use all the possible legal methods that there are in our disposal to kind of win this. So they started inviting people to join the local electoral commissions, who are the people counting the votes. Of course, no one got in. I think 2 or something out of 2,000 people applying independently got in the commissions, just because the government has their own lists of the people who need to be there, because they need people to count the votes properly. And then they said, okay, this didn't work. Let's then go and try to observe the elections. Let's apply as individual independent observers. And then people applied. And then the head of Belarusian Electoral Commission said, hey, we don't want observers in the polling stations because coronavirus suddenly. So these people had to observe from the outside, from the street. And so they kind of played this legal game of pretending that things are going to work out, and then they let people see that these things don't work out. And so I think it triggered a lot of people who have not been very engaged before, because they could see in their own eyes that this is how it works. We're being cheated along the way. And the third, and I think one of the biggest reasons, is the first time people saw they are the majority. If before this year, Lukashenko won the elections and the elections has been falsified and everyone kind of knew they were falsified, people also had this feeling that he won anyway. Okay, maybe he didn't get his 80%, but he got his 70 or 65. And this year, for many reasons, people saw that this is just not the case. And people were pretty sure he didn't win. And it's not about his 80%. People were quite sure he didn't get half of it, or he didn't get 55, So this also helped a lot of people unite. This feeling that we have not just been lied to, but he also didn't really win.
That's really interesting story, My next question is basically about the opposition, but you put an interesting light on this question already by saying that this year, this special year 2020, you got number of very interesting and brand new people coming from different angles. I listened to Polish radio recently. Believe me, Belarus is topic number one there. And everybody, and this is pretty awesome. Polish political arena is very, very divided. The main political party, they hate each other too much these days, but they are united on Belarus. And this is really heartwarming. You make our political arena a bit more sane and a bit more peaceful place these days. Anyways, the commentator said that this is all very interesting what's happening in Belarus, because the institutionalized opposition was virtually destroyed after 2015. There used to be opposition political parties, right? Operating in Belarus, not in parliament maybe, but still they existed. They had their legal structure. And now you don't have this official opposition, but still you have these, influential bloggers. You have a lot of angry people on the streets. You even have a labor class being reactivated. This is what made the change possible in my country, in Poland. You know this, I am sure, that not only intellectuals, not only students, but most of all working class, the labor class, people who work in these public factories, they got angry and they said, not in my name, Mr. Lukashenko, not in my name. This is not my system. I don't want it anymore. You are doing it. I saw you 2 days ago. You said, I'm waking up 5 a.m. because I go to tractor company to join the protest, to cheer these guys, to show them a support. This is extraordinary. I like it. I love it. But my question is the fact that you do not have an institutionalized opposition. You rather have this free electrons, this spontaneous order, all these beautiful things. But is this enough? Don't you think lack of institutionalized opposition could be a problem? In Maidan, in Ukraine, they had political parties. They had, all these official channels of collaboration. You don't have it. How do you see this as a problem or maybe a chance?
I think it's also very much a coin of both sides, because on the one hand, yes, when once the teams of the main candidates or ex-candidates for president united, there used to be I don't know how much you know on that, but there used to be 3 women who were like the political symbol of the whole Belarusian election activities. Those were 2 wives of the detained candidates. One of them also running for presidency herself, and the third one was just the representative of the team of one of the main candidates who has been detained too. And now 2 of them were forced to leave the country. Svetlana is now kind of coordinating things from Lithuania. Veronica has fled the country as well. So there is just now one left, and she's very far from being an experienced politician, let alone a party leader. And there is very clearly little institutional management and support from the side of political parties, which we obviously don't have. But then many also say it's in a way good, because people have shown a very impressive level of self-organization, and it's kind of harder to suppress in a way that you can just, detain the leader, and then boom, the protest is done and finished, because there is no clear leader. Everyone is just doing what they can do, and I have a feeling that this is the revolution that is being managed through Telegram channels, which is a famous messenger we use in Belarus. Because you get a message on Telegram saying like, hey, Belarusians, this is where we meet today, and this is what the plan is. And then like an hour from then, people gather there. Or somebody just texts you and says, hey, we need this here to support, this factory about to go on strike. And then people come, gather, and go there. So I've heard people saying we do lack some structure and some plan and some, strict management. But I also feel like this is a situation where you can hardly really offer people a solid plan of what to do, because everything is just so uncertain. And the things that are happening now, I doubt anyone could really plan for them. And the strikes in the factories, I feel like one of the big reasons for why the factories have gone on strike has not even been the falsified elections. It's also been the violence that has been addressed as people who were detained after the couple of days of protest after the election. And people have been bitten, people have been kept in horrible, inhumane conditions. And I feel like this has also been one of the big reasons why the factories have gone on strike, because this unprecedented violence is just scary. And it also does make people angry to a big extent.
Yeah, it's not just elections, but it's also the brutality, right, of the government, brutality of the police.
To be honest, I think this is a very big point here, because they detained 7,000 people or around that in the 2 days of the protest following the election. And if you think of it, if you detain 7,000 people around the country, the majority of them coming from Minsk, but also from the regions, there is barely a single person coming from Belarus who doesn't know somebody who has been detained and who has not heard the stories. And then we've seen some priests joining, so some church representatives speaking up against violence, the doctors, the schools, because you can say you are not political, when this is none of your business and I don't care much about your elections. But I don't really know if you can say you're not against violence. Yeah. So I think this has really been a very big and important uniting point for the nation. Even though it's sad and scary, I also think it in a way helped, if you can say this.
Yeah, definitely. And I know your sister was detained, so you lived this tragedy through in your family, in your own family. Can you just very briefly tell us what did you feel those days, those nights?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in a way, we were lucky, if I can say this again, because the stories I've heard from her are obviously horrible and horrifying, but she also hasn't been, beaten to an extent that many were. So what happened is they were walking towards the city center in a company of like 12 or 15 people from their office after work. And to the best of my knowledge, they were walking to the protest and they were going to protest, but they couldn't even reach the place where it happened. When the special police car stopped by, and then the special police forces started running, and then the people also started running different directions, because this is what Belarusians do when they see police cars, you just run. 'cause no one wants to get to the detention centers, and you never know if you will. So they started running, and the police started chasing them, and they got 4 out of 15 people, including my sister. And so the first thing they did is they took their mobile phones, and this was quite a quick talk. They go, you either give us your password or, you know, we're going to beat you. And then no one really doubts this is not just, you know, these are not just words. This is going to happen. So they gave away the phones. They shared their passwords. So, you know, the police officers started scrolling the chats, started looking which channels you're reading and what you are subscribed to, started asking questions. And they spent the next 5 to 6 hours in the police car, just running around the city and detaining more and more people, waiting until the car, you know, gets full. And then they were driven to the detention center, and they spent the night outside, and it was freaking cold, and many of them were not even dressed appropriately. And then it's also very hard to know where your relative who has been detained is, because there are no official lists easily available.
And they shut down the internet, right, for 1 or 2 days?
And they did shut down the internet. I'm not entirely sure if it also was the case when she got detained, or if it was already getting better back then. But she managed to call me from the police car, so I knew she got in trouble, and we started looking for her straight away. And it still took us a day and a half to figure in which of the detention centers she's kept. And this again is thanks to the volunteers who have started like a chain of basically an entire organization that was gathering data from the detention centers and assisting relatives in trying to find where your friends or relatives are. Yes, and then she spent around 3 days there, and she has been released, although she got a 10-day sentence because of the public pressure, because the people started complaining, protesting, the people got angry. Most of the people were released a few days after, so she got to spend around 3 days there.
Yeah, this is really, really sad. But this is also what made people think that things are not going well. I have a question to you about libertarians in Belarus. Libertarians and classical liberals. We have a number of friends of freedom disposition in your country. I think the largest name that supported ideals of freedom even back in the 90s is Yaroslav Romanchuk. And I know that you attended classes he provided a few years ago, and that helped to shape your ideas, right? So he's a great educator, great spreader of freedom, good friend of us here at Liberty International as well. So I have a question about himself, but also other freedom organizations, leaders of libertarian public opinion, people like Vadim Mozheiko and his Liberal Club. Are these guys active in all this? What do they do? Do they collaborate? Everybody's doing things on their own. What's the libertarian, what's this position of libertarians in this entire revolution of dignity, or whatever we call it in Belarus?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, yes, if you ask me about the libertarian leaders in Belarus, Yaroslav would clearly be the one to mention, alongside with the Liberal Club. I know the Liberal Club has not been very active recently, mainly because its members have started their own project and have started being engaged in different initiatives, not dependent and not on behalf of the Liberal Club. Evgeny Trigerman, for example, got more into the Minsk dialogue that you may have heard of. But then Vadim Mozheiko was also, he was in the team of one of the candidates running for presidency at this election. And when you speak of how united the people are, I would say very united, because if we could potentially, favor, there were three main candidates from day one. And if you could disagree on which of them you support more, when back to when there were three of them, this kind of was possible. But then when they all got detained and basically united, and all joined the team of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, she basically, regardless of her program, because she doesn't really have the political program, it's neither libertarian nor communist. She's basically just saying, I'm gonna be the president for half a year and then organize the new fair elections that anyone can take part in. So I don't think there is much you can disagree on regarding her program, because there is no program. So I feel like anyone fighting for freedom in Belarus is basically fighting for her as well. Because there is no political competition or any kind of competition. At this point, it's her or the status quo. As long as you're a libertarian, you're not very much in favor of the status quo. So the people just went for her. And I feel like in the libertarian, among the libertarians of Belarus and way beyond this, people are quite united in who they support.
Great. Last question from myself, and then we switch to questions from the people. But I couldn't resist to not ask questions about this, and this is about Russia. We know that this is a big bear sleeping next door, but the bear sometimes gets angry. It punished Ukraine in 2014 for basically changing the government elites. They didn't like the new people, and they said, you're gonna pay a price. Aren't you guys afraid about the price that Moscow gonna prescribe? And one more thing, also from Polish media, I just listened to this experts debate on Belarus. One of them said an interesting thing. He said, well, they didn't have a best relation with Lukashenko. They, I mean, Kremlin, Putinistas, and all these people in Moscow, they might actually be fine with some changes. However, they will be still active, and they may have their own favorite either person or group of people, and they might be sponsoring or pushing new leaders for Belarus after the reset is being done. This is really interesting. This is different than Ukrainian scenario, but also very dangerous, because that can be, some scary character in white dress, showing up as Democrat, showing up as a nice guy, friend of the people, but he'll be even more with Putin than today's Lukashenko. What are your take on this, the entire thing of Russia?
Well, I'll first have to outline these are going to be either my personal opinions or my personal opinions based on the things and the expert talks I've heard and watched, because I'm far from being an expert on Russia. But I think there is quite a difference in the situation that we experience here from the situation that they experienced in Ukraine, for two main reasons. Firstly, if you look at what we could hear from the program and from the messages that the candidates have been sending, they're not very anti-Russian in a way. So it's not like the people running for presidency, the opposition says, we are very EU oriented. Because if you look at our elections back in 2010, the opposition was very EU oriented, right? So they did want this. This time, I feel like the people running for presidency understand that we are just, way too dependent on Russia to say we're not gonna continue our collaboration and our friendship. They have been stressing it repeatedly. They've been saying we are not, denouncing any treaties that we have with Russia. We are not turning our hands to Europe. We are just going to be building relationship with all our partners in the best interest of our independence and of our country and our nation. So the the first thing is that the rhetoric of the people who are running for presidency and who are now arguably the president that the majority have chosen are not expressing their anti-Russian, thoughts and plans.
Mm-hmm.
And the second very big thing is, unlike what happened in Ukraine and Crimea, Belarusians don't really want to join Russia, and the Belarusian nation is very pessimistic towards the very close integration with the Russians. And there has been this recent poll asking whether Belarusians would like to join the Russian Federation as part of the country. And to the best of my knowledge, less than 7% said yes. So Belarusian people are not the people who want to be joined, and so shall Russia interfere, they will also get resistance from the Belarusian nation, which now is also more united in fighting what they don't know, because we've had quite short but quite intense experience recently. So if you listen to the experts discussing it now, I feel like most of them agree this is not in the Russian interest and not even in the Russian style to interfere in the situations like this. Because first, the alternative they're getting is not very anti-Russian, and second, the people of Belarus are not very pro-Russian, not in a way of cooperation and economic relations, but in a sense of we don't feel like we belong to one country. And
you guys are very, very pragmatic about this, and that's potentially good. I just hope there will be not new leaders being created back in Kremlin to be shown to Belarusian people as their best leader. But you are smart people. You're getting more and more involved. People go outside with true Belarusian flags, white, red, and white. Not so many European flags, but I think that's good. This must be related with patriotism. If you want it to be successful, it must be patriotic, not cosmopolitan Brussels sponsored. So I have my hope that everything will be fine, but this is definitely an issue that should be very closely watched, because the bear is dangerous out there. We know about that. Okay, enough questions from me. You did great, Maria. Very thoughtful. Let's start. I got a number of emails with these questions. Let's start with our friend from Spain. His name is Angel Manuel Garcia Carmona. And he says, obviously, I cannot stand with a communist authoritarian person like Lukashenko, although the country has not reached the Venezuelan situation. It is far from having a moderate purchasing power. Nevertheless, when it comes to COVID-19 tackling, he has not applied the same kind of totalitarian lockdowns than the rest of Western nations, Spain or Hungary, for instance. What is the real reason?
For not having the lockdown at COVID times?
It's not explicitly said. Maybe because you already said what is the reason why people are angry. So this answer you already gave. Let's take that. What's the reason why no big lockdowns were imposed?
Okay. First off, this is something I did mention, but I also think this is a big thing here. I think COVID was where his reputation started shaking like never recently, because the measures he has applied at this time were extremely unpopular, and they were deemed very ineffective, and not even the measures themselves, but the general attitude that he and the government has taken. So they were mainly trying to pretend it's a joke and this is not serious. He legit said, do you see the virus? You don't see it, this means it doesn't exist, which is ridiculous, right? Like, and very much not scientific. So the whole approach was very unpopular. And I think it was also where the civil society started uniting, because we've had campaigns collecting the money, supporting the doctors and we actually got this chance to feel like a united nation. But also, I think there are two reasons, if you think of it, why we did not have a very strict lockdown. First, we just couldn't afford it economically. I feel like this would be just too hard for us to handle. And second is
maybe it's good that he didn't impose harsh lockdowns, right? Because maybe
he did
that.
not. He did
Do you,
not,
do you
and I
think
think
it's positive that he did not?
I would personally say yes. This is quite a nice thing, but also something that we could have done. Like, Belarusians disagree on whether we needed a strict lockdown. But what we clearly needed is no military parades, gathering thousands of people.
Right.
Not like publicly disregarding the importance of the situation and not trying to ignore anything that is happening, not hiding the numbers of the people dying and being infected. And one of the second reason I think he did that is because he took this very ironic and very not serious approach to the COVID situation from day one. And when this is what you do, when you say the whole virus is a joke on day one, it's really hard to, smoothly shift to saying this is a big problem and we're going to have the lockdown. So even though what he was saying changed, so he started, admitting the virus exists. And he has used it repeatedly at the elections as an excuse to not let the observers in and do more stupid things, like not inviting the international observers as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between going too far with lockdowns, what we truly observed here in Europe, many places, and denying that the virus even exists. So this would be like two extreme stances. And if you decide to take one, and common sense is maybe somewhere between. I have a next question from our VP, our Vice President, Ken Skuland. He says, for about 20 years, we participated in summer liberty camps in Lithuania that was mostly attended by Belarusians. Do you know of any of the activists who had been involved with those summer camps?
This is a hard one. Is it a different one from the one we did in Ukraine?
Yeah, these the ones that Ken is mentioning. The camp looks similar, but they were organized in Lithuania by Virgis Daukas, who is our representative in Lithuania for many years. Mm-hmm. And Yaroslav Romanchuk was bringing, in similar fashion to what he did in Ukraine, he was bringing usually a bus of students to Lithuania. But we talk about late 90s and early 2000s. Do you happen to know any of these young freedom lovers other than Yaroslav Romanchuk, who used to go there?
I think there are two problems here. And the first is that I'm slightly too young for the late 90s, early 20s. So this might not be my target audience, and those may not be the people I know the best. But the second thing, which I think is an even bigger problem for me when it comes to answering this question, is that I may happen to know a lot of people from there. I just may not know that they come from there as well. Because the way Belarusian activists work generally, and the way the whole thing functions, is you would do a lot. And once you do one, you'd go to another one. You'd learn that there is the third one, you'd also do the third one. So you kind of try to get the information from different points. So even though I may know the people, I may just never get to talk that they've been part of, this specific activity. But quite importantly, I feel like they all do contribute. So you may be inspired, like it pretty much was the case for me in Ukraine, to start, getting into it, and then you just keep learning. And for many of us, it's hard to say which of them has shaped,
Perfect.
who you are to the biggest. So it's hard for me to answer, but I'm also pretty sure if I do research a little bit, I'll find a whole bunch of people, because the civil society of Belarus is generally not this huge. So you happen to know a lot.
I'm sure, you started with Liberty Camp 2013. Now you are very active freedom activist, going on the streets, talking to media, also going to tractors company. I am sure there are also other freedom lovers who were maybe somewhere in deep Lithuania in early 2000s, learn about freedom, learn about Bastiat, Hayek, and Mises,
Really
and now spreading the good spirit.
I know Julia Kurganovic is joining for sure.
Yes. Okay, Maria, I have a question coming from Africa now. The country is Nigeria, and this is our freshest, newest representative, Kingsley Rowland. He has two questions to you, two short questions. First, Maria, what laws are in Belarus to protect human rights for social activists like yourself? And second, what political ideology or philosophy drives the political culture in Belarus these days, or in general?
Those are not small. Those are massive. Okay, starting with the legislation, I think it's generally not very much in favor of the activists, but rather against, because the many things that you would like to do are restricted. Sometimes it's in the way the laws are phrased, but also very often it's in the way the laws are interpreted and applied. It's very hard to register specific forms of NGOs, for example, and organizations. We are very limited on the freedom of expression and the freedom of speech and the freedom of, just gathering in the street to express your disagreement. You have to approve all the demonstrations. Of course, they assign you specific places on the outskirts of the city. Many never get approved. So I feel like, again, I'm not very far from being a lawyer or a law expert in Belarus, but speaking from the personal experience, everything that is happening regardless of the legislation, not thanks to it. And I'll have to think for a while to come up with which laws actually support and help us in what we are doing. That's a tough one, because I can name you a whole bunch of those that are making our life tougher, but gotta be hard to recall which ones help. And the second one was?
What is the main political philosophy that drives political culture in Belarus?
I would not say there is one. Really can't feel like we are united here. I think a whole bunch of them for different people.
Mm-hmm. We have two questions from Mark, but the first one I can even respond. It's very, very short. How long has Lukashenko been in power? So 26 years, right? Since 1994.
Yes, it is right.
Yes, and Mark has second question. He says, in America, our protests just turn into criminal vandalism and criminal looting. Does this happen in Belarus?
This is a really good one, because I don't know if the memes about it are very popular in Poland, but they are quite widespread in Belarus and Russia. Because the protests have generally been insanely peaceful, to an extent that people clean up after themselves. And you would see pictures with like volunteers with plastic bags, taking the trash from the streets. And like when people stood on the benches to protest, they would like take off the shoes and like stand in their socks, which is really funny, but also quite cute. And people have been first very non-violent. So for the first 2 or 3 nights after the elections, we've had pretty brutal night protests. But I think generally the brutality of this protest mainly came from the reaction of the government, not from the people. So it's not like people came to the streets and started shooting. No one did. It's generally because of how the government reacted. But even in this case, they quite shortly became, I wouldn't say unpopular, but people got really scared to join them. And I had a lot of friends who were standing for the freedom and for change, but they were just scared to go because you didn't know if you're going to be, detained, shot, if you're going to be beaten on the streets or get some serious injuries. So people moved to the daytime protests. And now thousands and thousands of people are gathering in the city at the daytime because they just feel it's safer. And those have been very peaceful and very well organized, which is especially significant because there is no organizer. It's very, grassroots in a sense. And yes, and what is also quite interesting, the police has shown very little response to this lately. Before this, should you try to have a demonstration that has not been approved by the government, you would just get, police trucks coming straight off, detaining the people, and then everyone running away. And this time we have like thousands gathering daily, and the police has seemingly disappeared. So there is like very little to no reaction to what is happening. And interestingly enough, it doesn't change how peaceful the protests are. So people, manage themselves. So in our sense, it's like less police, less problem.
I saw some of these memes. They're really cool with hashtag Belarusian Lives Matters, and showing that, hundreds of thousands of people can actually protest the very same thing, police brutality. And let's be honest, much harsher brutality than in America, but in a polite way. It doesn't need to be criminal activity with shops being plundered and so on and so forth. So great example, great example. I really appreciate what you are doing, guys. Next question, again from Angel from Spain. He says, may you foresee a migration influx towards Poland and Baltic republics? We should remember that after Ukrainian Maidan, many of them fled to Poland.
Absolutely, yes, but I feel like this would rather be if we win and the revolution, gets through, the people are gonna stay. And at least now I feel like they are willing to stay, because this is like your lifetime project. You've been fighting for having a change in the country, and then you get it. That's not when you leave, goal achieved. Now, start working for it. But I do foresee a lot of people migrating shall this not work out. And this is not just my opinion. This is me talking to a whole bunch of people, many of whom say, okay, it's either all or nothing. Like, it's win or lose. If it doesn't work, I'm just not gonna leave. I don't see living in this country anymore. First, because you might be, the government just simply might start looking for the people who were active during the protests, and then applying certain measures to the activists, which no one wants. And second, because people just don't imagine living under this regime anymore. Just like this regime doesn't imagine leaving the country just yet. So I feel like if this does not work out, I cannot even imagine how many people leave.
Right. I remember, I don't remember, this was before I was born, but I was reading about it and hearing from my parents and their friends, family members, that in Poland, in 1981, the martial law was declared. It really downsized and the opposition of those days, and it brought the very sad days to Polish population, and hundreds of thousands of people left afterwards. So this is the worst thing that can happen if the spontaneous protests driven by true reasons and good reasons will be destroyed. Then I'm sure a lot of people will leave. Scott, who is watching on Facebook, has a short question. Have we ever had a libertarian party or a classical liberal party in Belarus?
Not that I know of.
Yaroslav Romanchuk used to be a vice president of the Civic Opposition Party, or Civic something party, right? But that was not a typical libertarian party. It was a libertarian politician within center-right party or something like that, correct?
I would guess so. I don't think, it might also be just me, but I don't think we've ever had a like libertarian party as such. Clearly never in the parliament. There is like a, what do you call it, like a community of libertarians in Belarus, but I doubt they've ever been a party.
Maybe it's not yet time for this type of activism.
Maybe coming shortly.
Maybe one day. Sanjay, who watched us on Facebook, asks, he says, listening from India, wondering if democracy is nothing but the dictatorship of the proletariat anyway.
I think in our case, most of the people fighting for democracy are not the factory workers, even in like the proletariat, even though they are now ironically the people we put our hopes on, because like the strike now seems to be one of the few methods that could actually push the regime to think about, possibly not about leaving the country straight off, but like could be one of the mechanism that would actually make our voices heard. Because, you know, just a bunch of people standing on the streets will not. But I feel like this time it's a very much a revolution of elites as well. And like the things that people want are actually very, very promising as well. People stand for, you know, fair elections. People stand for freedom. People stand for their political rights. And there is a lot of private business joining, and there is a lot of big business joining. So I feel like this is, or I want to feel like this. But I think this is a revolution fighting for opportunity. And a lot of people who do this are also ready to actually work for what is coming next. And they may know it's not going to be easy, but the values of the people fighting for these freedoms are quite impressive and quite promising.
That's really promising. Another question from Nigeria. Johnson Sani asks, what is the situation of journalist that was arrested and sentenced to many years in prison before the protests? Maybe he refers to Cichanowski. I don't know for sure, but
there have been.
I'm not sure who was sentenced for many years.
Hold on. Because there have been a bunch of journalists detained. There have been a bunch of foreign journalists detained as well, mainly Russian that I know of. Many of them have been released. I don't remember anyone who would be sentenced for a couple of years. Hold on. Let me just quickly. I don't know.
What about Mr. Cichanowski? Do we know when he is leaving the prison, or is he?
Depends on how successful the revolution is. He actually recently had a birthday, and people, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, and the people decided to gather and congratulate him next to the prison to like start singing songs and shouting, because you clearly cannot get inside, but like he would hear that. And so literally a few hours before this, he was moved from the detention center in Minsk to a prison in a different city. So people came and like sang songs and congratulated him without knowing he's just not gonna hear anything. Yeah, so he's currently detained, and he's been accused of the crimes under a bunch of articles in the criminal code, which is what are those organizing and preparing activities that go strictly against the public order, and then also violence addressed at the police officers. It's phrased a little bit more in a more fancy way, but and some of these articles are punished by up to 6 years in prison. So if we don't win, this is going to be quite a long detention for him. But
only Lukashenko knows how long, right?
for now, yes, yeah, as long as he wants to. Same goes for Viktor Babariko, for the second candidate who is now detained.
This is basically the difference between rule of law and rule of man. When you have rule of law, then you know what is the accusation, what is the sentence for it,
Yeah, and
what
it
is
needs,
legal, what is illegal. And in this kind of system, rule of man is whatever Lukashenko wants.
and this is scary because like it doesn't even need to be proven. They just detain. A friend of my sister who she was detained with is now a suspect under a criminal case as well, for basically nothing. Like she was just literally, the thing she was doing is she was joining a peaceful protest together with my sister. So she's now working with her attorney to make sure she doesn't get a prison sentence for literally like out of nowhere.
Let's hope the people who will worry about sentences will be the ones who are prescribing the sentences today.
Hoping for that, yes.
Yeah. We slowly go, we'll be finishing, let's say last 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Mark from the United States asks, many Americans seem to have lost sight of the value of their freedom. What would you say to Americans about the value of guarding their freedom?
That's a good one. I'll have to think about this one. But generally, I've heard this from a lot of Europeans too, saying that they just stop valuing what they have because they take it so much for granted. And this is, I think, like it's a very common belief as well that you do value freedom when you get it through your activism and actions. And I think the only way you can actually realize how much this should be appreciated is in the case of US, looking at the examples of the countries where it's not, and just constantly reminding yourself a lot of things that you take for granted are the things that people unfortunately have to fight for. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from the friends of mine, mainly not in the US though, but like across Europe, saying they have been really shocked to know which basic things we can't do here, and which basic laws don't work here. So yeah, just do remind yourself from time to time how lucky you are to already have a lot of things, and the legal system that functions, and the law that works, and the country where the whole system depends on one person way less, regardless of who comes into power.
I definitely agree. Last question. This is actually something I wanted to ask, but Leonard Ongunvedi, I believe from Africa, he has the same question basically. What's the backup plan if the revolution fails? And from me, I would add, what are your hopes for the coming days, coming weeks, and what are your fears? Or in a nutshell, what do you expect is going to happen? Are these protests even growing? What is going to happen next?
I think the fears are that people are just gonna get tired, and a lot of people hope this is gonna be quick and fast. Like, you go and protest once, you go twice, and then boom, you win. And for many years, the message the opposition has been sending is like, once 100,000 people goes on the street, the regime falls. Last week on Sunday, 200 people, at least 200 people, many feel there have been more, gathered on the streets of Minsk for an illegal 200,000 for an illegal peaceful demonstration, and surprisingly the regime has not fallen. So I think what I fear is that the people are just going to get tired and seeing no clear plan, seeing no clear chance of winning here. They're just going to get back to normal, start working, start shopping, and just call it a day. And the hopes would be that, I think one of the biggest hopes today is the strikes in the factories, because there has been an unprecedented activity from the workers. And I listened to some of them yesterday as well at one of their demonstrations, and they're very determined for a change, and they're very angry, and the requirements that they set are impressively political. They literally say we are striking until he resigns. And this is not something you can compromise on. You know, it's not like Lukashenko can come and say, okay, let's talk. Because they literally tell you leave, we start working. And there have been a bunch of factories going on strike now. And what people hope for is that many more support. And there's been a foundation, not a foundation, but like a fund that people started to support those who are going to be fired, those who are going to lose their jobs. And I think one of the biggest things that people do now is they go to support the workers, hoping they're going to keep striking. And I don't really think there is a plan B. I'm not sure if the opposition has a very clear plan B. They clearly don't talk about it. Because for now, what they're aiming at is, you know, succeeding with our plan A. But generally, it could be something like trying to keep the political activity of people until the parliamentary elections, you know, or being active at any possible public event that there is, be that like Minsk half marathon or like some football matches where people just come with flags and shout. And they've also talked even before the elections about a referendum to change the constitution, which is one of the ways of political activity. But if you really think of it, you're still going to be playing in the legal field that belongs to one or two people in this country. So I think if this doesn't work, the plan would be to try to keep the activity of people and like accumulate it into, I don't know, maybe trying to register a political party, but you can't really register a political party now. So maybe, you know, borrowing the already registered but inactive political party from somebody and staying active in this regard. But I think for a lot of people that I've talked to, there is really no plan B. It's either it works or they're just going to be leaving.
Let's hope plan A works. But I believe that Belarus will not be the same place again. I mean, too much happened recently. Well, the weekend will say a lot as well. I hope you guys gonna gather in large numbers again, because the momentum needs to grow, and hopefully other things happen, and you get it sooner than later. Thank you so much, Maria. You did amazing work. You did great. Very clear answers. A lot of really interesting insights about what's happening in Belarus. I want to thank you for deep from my heart, and I'm sure all of us at Liberty International audience want to thank you and your friends for what you do. Because, okay, from one hand, you do it for your country, for yourself, but you also do it for the cause we all love, the cause of freedom, of humankind, right? That everyone should be able to live free without, you know, government on your neck. This is important, and we support you. If you get any idea how we as Liberty International can engage into this battle by helping good people, let me know, let us know. You have our support, and we can think of different things, you know, charity issues, maybe more. Think about it. I want to thank you once again. And to our audience, thank you so much for coming here in good numbers, both here on Zoom and on Facebook. Thank you very, very much for your attendance, for your questions, very nice questions. And I just want to say that we're gonna continue at Liberty International with these conversations. Next month, most likely it's gonna be a libertarian superstar from Africa, George Aiche, but we will keep you posted. This is almost confirmed, but still 99%, not 100%. We are also starting a project called Libertarian Solutions, which is online course that last 8 weeks with our amazing board members like Ken Schooland, like Dr. Mari Ruwart, Kyle Warner, Per Billund, James Lark, about principles of libertarianism and how they translate into real life, how these freedom ideals can really make our life better and freer. This is something you're gonna see very soon on your Facebook feed and on your emails, because we are starting marketing. And especially people in Belarus, people in uneasy places, let's call it that way, we encourage you very, very much to join Libertarian Solutions. There are scholarships, especially designed for people from uneasy places. So make sure to sign up. And thank you so much for the participation tonight. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mandy, for helping us with everything. My name is Jacek Spendel. Thank you so much for today's meeting, and keep fighting for freedom. Thank you.
Thank you too.
I should say at the end, Živeli Svobodna Belarus.
Živě Belarus.
Or Živet Volna Belarus in Belarusian, right?
True. Tak. Děkuji.
Let's hope for it. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.